Welcome to 101. I'm Lorna Virgili, and this is our monthly interview with County Executive Ike Leggett. Mr. Leggett, good day. Good to see you again. It's always a pleasure.
Delighted to be back.
We're back. Here we are again. And let's get this program started about the proposed teen curfew. We've been hearing a whole lot about it, and let's try to explain this to not only the residents, but parents and the youth in our community. First of all, what could a curfew accomplish in Montgomery County?
Well, first of all, let me say that a curfew in and of itself is not a panacea for all of the challenges and difficulties that we have with young people. It is not designed to do that. It is one component of a variety of things that we are doing and will do in the future. The first component is to have a police force with the size and the variations of resources that are needed. And so we've attempted in the past to maintain our police force at the level that we can reasonably afford and continue to build from that. One of the challenges we have a master plan that calls for an additional 250 officers to be added to the force, and we have not kept pace with that addition, and we hope to establish that and rebuild that. The second part of it is that we've had for at least 5-6 years now a very strong positive youth initiative. This is an initiative designed to give our young people some alternatives after school, weekend, so they can be far more productive members of our society. It means work, it means recreational activities, it means study activities and mentorships, all of those kinds of things that we're engaging our youth in as an alternative to that. But when you look at Montgomery County today, we still know that there are probably 1,300 gang members in Montgomery County. If you look at the crime statistics for young people, the percentage of those who are arrested from 2006 to 2010, there's a significant increase in that number, even though it has gone down slightly between 2009 and 2010. But if you look at it over that 4 or 5 year period, there's been a huge increase. And so what we've decided to do, at least my recommendation is, that we add a curfew component to that. That curfew component will simply say that young people under the age of 18, meaning 17 and younger, those young people, except for in special cases, that you are to be off the street or not engaged in activities that are not accompanied by an adult after certain hours between 11 and 6 and 5 in the morning. That's essentially the proposal. This is not something that is totally new in this country. Many communities have it. There may be different variations of it, but it exists in probably over 300 or 400 communities around the country.
Now, we do know that communities as Prince George's County and the District of Columbia, right around our jurisdiction, they do have it implemented. Is this one of the reasons why Montgomery County is following the lead, or is it because the youth from those jurisdictions end up playing in our backyard?
Well, it's a combination of all things. It's a combination of the increase in crime. It's a combination of the fact that we find now that young people, given the economy, have fewer jobs to be engaged in. It's a combination of the fact that our neighboring jurisdiction, i.e. Prince George's County and the District of Columbia, do not have curfews. Therefore, on the border regions next to those particular jurisdictions, we find that young people are coming over in disproportionate numbers into Montgomery County because we do not have a curfew. And if you do not have a curfew and others do, then young people are smart. They're going to go to areas where there's the least resistance. The curfews are not always popular with young people. If I was at that age, I probably would object also to the fact that we have a curfew, but I think it's a responsible thing to do, and given the exceptions that we're making, and given the fact that it is a civil penalty, not a criminal offense, I think that we put together a package that will respond to the challenges that our youth are facing, respond to the difficulties that we see within our own forces trying to build the size of force that we want, and to give our young people some positive alternatives.
Now, how would the law, what would include as far as exceptions for youth perhaps that have jobs, that do have jobs and need to stay working past the curfew hours of 11 p.m. on weeknights?
First of all, anyone who's accompanied by an adult, then they are already accepted. Young people who are working, as you've just described, that's an exception. If you're in a supervised activities, i.e. activities at the college or the school system, those kinds of activities are included as well. We've even made some exceptions for what we call the so-called movie nights, and we are able to deal with that as well. So we've built in those exceptions. We're looking at how those things will work in terms of the law itself. It was not designed as a sort of take it or leave it type of approach, but let's have a tool, let's have an instrument, let's have a process that I believe can be effective and also provide our youth with some positive alternatives so they can engage in those activities that we think they should be engaged in during the weekends and on the weeknights after 11 o'clock. We've tried to respond to those things.
What would be penalties for youth that are out there and they're asked by police officers to go back home and they don't? What would be the scenario of implementation?
You face a 100% $100 fine for the first offense and $150 after that. Now, my belief is, I believe that our young people are law-abiding, that the vast, overwhelming number of young people, once they recognize the potential for that penalty, once they recognize and are clear about the curfew, I think that they would abide by the law. And so it's not designed to punish young people, but to give them an alternative, to give the police an alternative, and to discourage them from being out late at night. We don't want to see young people rounded up and huge fines that are given and so forth. I think at that point, we'll have a real challenge. I believe that young people, by and large now, will abide by the law. There may be some that are out there that are sort of hardened young people. There may be some out there who's totally going to disregard that. But I'm very confident that once our young people understand the law, understand the exceptions, and understand the penalties that are involved, we'll abide by the law.
Now, for those that might think that perhaps police officers are going to be out there profiling based on age and race, what would you say to that? Because that's been one of the arguments that has been floating.
I'm mystified by that. First of all, we have a very professional police force, and I think it is a disrespect to our police, the leadership of our police, to assume that our police in some form or fashion will profile. That has not been our history, and I don't think that that will be the history going forward. If one is capable of profiling, they don't need this law to do it because basically you've called that person a racist, and I don't think that we have that in our police force. I resent that comment from people who make that assertion about our police. They are professional, they will do what is right, and carry the law forward in the way it was intended.
Okay. We're going to take a very short break, and we will be right back with County Executive Ike Leggett, and we will continue talking about this proposed curfew for teens in Montgomery County. We'll be right back. Welcome back to 101. I'm Lorna Virgili, and we're sitting again here talking with County Executive Ike Leggett. Right before the break, we were talking about the curfew. Now, some people have the debate that curfews simply do not work. They don't bring crime rates down, and that it has not happened in other jurisdictions. What do you say to that?
I think, to be fair, that the evidence or the facts are probably mixed. But it's really difficult to quantify that and to have the empirical data to suggest one way or the other in that regard. The reason for that is because communities are so unique as it relates to crime, as it relates to the demographic makeup of the communities, where they're located, whether that they're urban. In our case, whether they're located adjacent to a very large urban area with the neighboring communities with curfews. By the time you walk through all of the parameters involved, it is difficult to find a study that you could pull out and say, well, this study fits the profile of Montgomery County, and therefore we can apply the results there to what we've seen here. It doesn't work that way. So what I've done is to say there, A, is a serious problem. B, we have professionals, our police forces, our leadership in the police department, our neighboring jurisdictions, all have looked at it and said it works, it provides them with an additional tool. Given that set of parameters, the challenge that we face in Montgomery County, and the fact that we have police that are urging us to do this because they believe that it's effective, and I've had the chief of police in both the district and Prince George's County come to me to say that they think that it's a useful tool, then I'm going to err on the side of the police, and I'm going to err on the side of providing greater protection, because I don't want to be wrong. I don't want to wake up one morning and see that, oh boy, we should have done something extra, we should have taken this extra step, and we have a problem at that point in time that is too consuming, and we can't easily correct it. I'd much rather be proactive in this regard, and err on the side of providing the additional support, and err on the side of our police and its leadership.
So how do you feel is going to be effective in Montgomery County, number one? And number two, what youth under the age of 18, when sometimes they're 19 and a half, and they're the ones that are out there committing some sort of behaviors that are the ones that we want to be prevented?
Well, I started off by saying this is not a panacea for all crimes. It's not a panacea for all youth crime. This is our best estimate of where we think we should draw the lines. It's consistent with what we've seen in other jurisdictions. And no, it will not solve all crimes of people who are over that age. It will not solve all the challenges of problems that happened prior to the curfew. But at least it's a start and it's in the right direction, and I'd much rather err on the side of at least making an attempt in an area that we know we have a problem, even though we have not consumed the entire challenge that we have. That's for another day and for another time for us to go back and look at other tools that may address those who may be involved in crime who are above that age, or times in which crime has been committed prior to that time. Keep in mind, we're doing additional things as well in order to address this overall challenge.
Two components, parents and obviously the youth. What do you say to the youth that are perhaps a little bit up in arms saying, well, we're going to pay for the behaviors of a few, and we're going to be punished for those behaviors when we don't? What do you say to those, to that segment of the population?
Well, a few is a large number. We're talking about a considerable number of crimes that have occurred in Montgomery County. We're also talking about young people who may be victims of crime. We're also talking about young people who may go out and be caught up in the atmosphere of the moment and become criminal suspects or lured into crime by people who are much older than gang members. One of the things that have occurred is that when you've had curfews, it has been shown, especially in the District of Columbia, where young people who have been the victims of crime, that number has gone down as well. And so we support that idea that young people who may be out who are innocent, who are out late at night, could become victims of crime, so we've supported that. We've addressed a huge problem of those young people who may be engaged potentially and caught up in the atmosphere of committing crimes itself. And so I look at that. I think that you come away with a benefit for everyone and for the entire community. This is not something that is isolated solely to one particular community. There are large swaths of Montgomery County where we have this problem, and I want to look at this comprehensively, and I think this is the direction we should be going in.
How about some parents that they question, well, curfew is up to us as a parent, not us, up to government. What do you say to those parents that might be concerned about that?
Well, there's no absolute here. There are areas in which government has already been engaged in some form of activity when we weighed the challenges that we face with the overall public interest and our constitutional rights for freedom, liberties, and those kinds of things, and the correct balance for parental involvement. But we made decisions already about young people who can vote. We made decisions about young people who drink, made decisions about young people who can purchase alcohol and tobacco and so forth. This is simply nothing more than a continued progression of the things at which we've already done. And it's not something that has not been tried and is in place in many other jurisdictions throughout this country. So it's not new, it's not novel, it's only new to Montgomery County. But the issues related to constitutional rights and the balance between public protections, parental rights, and the challenge that we face with crime is one that I think that we've properly balanced.
The next component, businesses, especially around movie theaters and places that tend to have the visiting of the youth. What would happen under the new proposed legislation regarding hiring teen working past those hours, especially during the weekend? Is that an exception within?
Well, yes. For people who are either hired and young people who are currently working and will work in the future, there's an exception for work. We want to encourage young people to work. Now, it's a little bit odd during the weekday that you should have young people working past the hour of 11 o'clock, but in some cases, if that's the case, and that's all permissible by parents and everyone else, then fine. The law permits you to do that. And clearly we're suggesting that you should work, and we want to encourage that. And that's an exception for which this law does not apply.
October 12th, County Council will hold a youth town hall meeting, basically to listen to the youth across the county. What do you expect for that day?
Well, the young people already said.
Well, first of all, are you going to swing by?
No, I don't plan to. The young people have already said to me in vast numbers that they don't want a curfew. If I was part of that group, I would probably say the same thing. But our judgment should not be based on what young people say. We want to listen to them and understand how we can make this law effective and respond to the concerns that they have. But we should not be solely guided by young people who will say, I don't want this. We should listen to them, we should respect their concern, but the concern should be, what is in the interest of our entire community? What is it is the broad community overall? And how we can make this effective while treating our young people with respect and dignity, but not simply responding to that and using that as a means to say we should do it. If I was a young person, I wouldn't do it either.
Very quickly, what has been the feedback from County Council? I've known that there have been several amendments that have been sent back and so forth. What is their last take, as far as you know, before a vote? Well,
I don't want to predict what the County Council will do. They are still engaged in the outreach process. They're still engaged in work sessions, but I feel reasonably confident that once you look at all the facts and you weigh the risks and the challenges and how we've crafted this bill, I feel very confident that it should be one that will be passed ultimately by the Council.
All right, thank you very much. We're going to take a small break and we'll be right back with County Executive Ike Leggett, and we're going to continue talking about other different issues from Montgomery County. We'll be right back. Welcome back to 101. I'm Lorna Virgili. Thank you for watching, and we continue our conversation with County Executive Ike Leggett. Once again, thank you so much for sitting here and talking with us. The first two segments of the show, we were talking about the proposed teen curfew, but now we're going to switch a little bit. Capital budget. You will be sending your capital budget. It will be released in January 15th, but there's a lot going on from here to January 15th. Reductions in several agencies. What can we expect, perhaps?
Well, let me explain why there may be reductions and why it is probably wise for us to consider that. When you look at the amount of debt that the county currently is paying for, the capital expenditures, it's the fourth highest portion of our overall budget, so we have to reduce that overall. Secondly, by paying so much into the capital side, we are actually squeezing out many programs and services on our operational side, and so we need to control that. Thirdly, there are some limitations that we have in terms of the guidelines that we've provided over the years to suggest what percentage of our costs and what percentage of debt we are carrying should fall within certain parameters, and we're right at the edge of those things. Well, for all of those reasons, we are simply saying we need to pull back on the overall capital budget. Now, that only begs the question. The question is, where do you pull back? Who is affected? What projects may be either reduced, eliminated, or changed in some fashion? And so what we need to do now is to sort of figure that piece out. And so what I've asked through our budget office is to engage with the department heads and the outside agencies so that we can get a better picture of what that ultimate recommendation will be. And that's a very difficult process to go through because we have some projects that are ongoing. We need new capacity, for example, for expansion of our school system. We've had probably close to 10,000 additional school systems, students in our school system. We need to be concerned about roads and bridges and recreational centers and community centers and a variety of things that are currently under construction or near construction in the county and our overall budgetary planning. So we need to address this, and I'm hopeful that in the next few weeks we'll be able to come forward with a plan based on the input that we receive from many of the outside agencies.
What is the overall economic picture for the county itself?
Well, you keep in mind that over the last 5 years, we've reduced the county's budget in terms of challenges of about $2 billion. We've closed that amount in budgetary gaps. Last year was at $300 million. As we sit now, we're talking about $100 million, and that $100 million is a real challenge, but it's much lower than the challenges we've had in the past. But there are an awful lot of things that we need to work through. For example, we don't know what's going to happen at the national level in terms of the Congress. We don't know precisely what may happen with the overall economy, and we're not certain about what may happen at the state level. And so we need to balance all of those things going forward. We hope that that number is reduced, but it very well could go up. So we have to resolve that. But if you add additional debt to that, it will take monies out of the operating budget that we need in order to resolve some of those challenges. So we have to balance the operating budget with the capital budget in the overall expenditures.
Now, one of the neighboring jurisdictions announced that they might have for the next fiscal year pay increase for county employees. Is that something that Montgomery County employees perhaps can see in the next, you're breathing heavily, that might have for the following fiscal year? Because a lot has been asked from those county employees in the last few years. So,
well, first of all, we have asked an awful lot from our employees, and they have given up a great deal. And I am grateful for their service, their work, and the things that they've done to help make Montgomery County what it is today. And we will look very clearly and carefully at all aspects of our pay arrangements to try to address them through our ongoing negotiations, which will start pretty soon. I recognize the sacrifices that they've made. I also recognize what our county residents have paid in terms of taxes. So we hope to find some balance, but I can't predict today what the ultimate outcome of the budget will be 6 months from now and what our overall union negotiation will be. I understand clearly, and I've heard from many of our workers about those sacrifices and the impact to them and their families.
Montgomery County was hit recently in 1 week, an earthquake and a hurricane. First responders, do you think they did an outstanding job, and is that going to cost taxpayers more?
Well, it may cost a little bit more because whenever you have the number of trees that are down, the number of people who are out working late at night, on the weekends, the holidays, and what have you, it's always a challenge to respond to that. And so we will see some increased costs as a result of that. I'm very much satisfied with the response of our first responders, and they did a terrific job under some very difficult circumstances and conditions. Unfortunately for us, we've had so much experience in the last year or two about all of this. We had unbelievable snow, we've had hurricanes, we've had 2 earthquakes now, we've had ice storms, we've had it all. And so our people have had to perform under all of those circumstances and conditions. And so when you go through it repeatedly, we tend to understand what we have to do, and the people respond accordingly. So they have responded again, and I'm so thankful for the leadership that we have in place and all the agencies that have worked to provide this county with an outstanding array of services and programs to respond to those inclement weather challenges.
Talking about inclement weather challenges, power outages, once again, thousands of residents experienced it. Pepco's performance this time around, were you more satisfied with their performance this time around compared to the past?
Well, some say it could only have gotten better compared to the past, but it did get better. I think that they brought in the outside crews very, very early in this process. I think that the communications that they had was much, much improved, and I think that they were very much well coordinated in terms of how they responded to this challenge. Now, the storm did not impact this particular area, the Petco region in Montgomery County, as much as some of the prior storms. But when you look at the array of people that they had, the management that they had in place, how well they coordinated and communicated, this is a big step in the right direction. There are still some things that I think we need to improve upon, and I'm not going to give them a total score today based on this storm, simply say that we've seen significant improvement and we want to continue that progress.
I think we only have like a minute or 2 minutes left of the show. A couple of things I want to talk about. The Fillmore Music Center officially opened doors in downtown Silver Spring. Expectations as far as economic development of that region. And number 2, Hispanic Heritage Month. It's from September 15th through October 15th. You already participated in 2 big events throughout the county, the Maryland Hispanic Business Conference and the Salvadorian Festival. So let's wrap up the show today on celebrations in the county.
Well, big celebration. Hispanic Heritage Month is an important event for Montgomery County and really for this entire nation. When you look at the contributions that Hispanics have made, not only to Montgomery County, but to the nation and the world as a whole. We are quite fortunate to have such a large array of Hispanic Americans who are residing in Montgomery County and contributing in such a significant way to the overall quality of life. And so this is an opportunity for us to celebrate that heritage and the contributions. And I welcome all of our citizens to join me in celebrating Hispanic Heritage Month. The Fillmore, a great success. It was a challenge. Many people wondered why we were doing this. When you go down now and you see the thousands of people that is attracting Silver Spring, the opportunity for the economic development of that entire block on the east side of Colesville Road, for greater tax incentives that will come, tax increases that will come as a result of the appreciation of businesses along that line, employment opportunity, but also providing a vibrancy to Silver Spring that enhances a section of Silver Spring that had missed the revitalization. This is a wonderful, wonderful venue. I urge people to go out to see the film more. There's a little bit of everything for anybody who wants to go there in terms of the acts and performers. So it only speaks well, I think, for Silver Spring and for the future of that particular area of the county.
Well, thank you so much for sitting with us once again. It's always a pleasure, and we always run short of time.
Yeah.
There's so much always happening in Montgomery County. So I'm Lorna Virgili, and thank you for joining us again on One-on-One with County Executive Ike Leggett. Thank you for watching.